Anin, Olivia Shortt, Indigenous cause. My name is Olivia Shortt, and I'm the moderator for this panel. We're talking about challenging imposter syndrome. I've titled it that as a discussion about success, going viral, and self-compassion. Uh, the invisible emotional labor of Indigenous and Black artists employed as curators, artistic creatives, and cultural producers is very much at the heart of the arts sector's work today in decolonization, reconciliation, Indigenous sovereignty, and Black liberation. This panel is aiming to address and discuss questions such as how do we take care of ourselves while also supporting the communities we belong to? How do we express our boundaries and create space for self-compassion? And how do we carry emotional labor through our bodies? Today, I have with me Yolanda Bonnell, Samson, Bonkeabantu Brown, and Ravyn Wngz, and I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their artistic practice, their own values, what motivates them to do the work they do, and anything else they want to tell us about themselves. So we'll start with Yolanda.
Ani, Yolanda Indigenous cause Kijiba Manga Nindigo Jabwemang Makwandindodam, Fort William First Nation in Donjaba Ninda. Hello, my name is Yolanda Bonnell. My spirit name is Circling Wolf. I am Anishinaabe South Asian European mix from Fort William First Nation in Thunder Bay, Ontario, also known as the Superior Robinson Treaty Territory, but I am based here in Decolonization and have been since 2011. I'm a performer, writer, facilitator, director, co-artistic leader. I do a lot of different things. My practice is primarily based in land-based creation. The stories I tell are for and about Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, non-binary, and trans folks. Is particularly from my communities, my Northwestern Ontario community. And I'm a co-artistic leader of Managing's Collective, which is a circle of artists that come together to create Indigenous performance. As I said, I do a lot of land-based creation. My work is rooted in my Anishinaabe values and kind of working and following the truth of my heart, and that's sort of what motivates my work and my practice and how I interact with institutions and other communities. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you. Could we go to Ravyn next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Ravyn Wngz. I'm Two-Spirit, African, Indigenous, Mohawk, born in Bermuda, raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So I've experienced life and community in a couple of different places, a couple of different borders. I'm a storyteller, artist, multi-hyphenate, artivist. So activist and art. I root my work in that of traditions, oral traditions of African storytelling, as well as my Indigenous traditions, my Mohawk warrior spirits. I'm a part of the Black Lives Matter Toronto chapter. And so my work has been over the past couple of years about the eradication of anti-Black racism, the resurgence of Indigenous peoples, and as I'm here residing in Takaranto, understanding my role as I've been called to reckon with the way that I participate with land, friends, family, community, non-community, people I agree with and don't agree with. I'm an abolitionist. I believe in Afrofuturism. I believe in indigenizing our mindsets as well as recognizing indigeneity across the Americas and the world. Yeah, that is me in a nutshell. I'm also a burlesque performer. So they call me the Black Widow of Burlesque because I am a reminder of what everyone has forgotten.
That's amazing. Me. And Samson, can you talk a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Sure. So my name again is Samson Bonkeabantu Brown. I my pronouns are he and him. I am a trans artist. I am a playwright. I am a sangoma, which is a South African diviner and healer. I am a hoodoo, which is an African traditional practice and religion within that is practiced on North American soil, specifically on Turtle Island. Um, I also live in Takaranto, um, and my my practice is really steeped in both trans activism, but also in ancestral veneration, which is so key, I think, in terms of allowing us to shift and move through the world and reconnect with ourselves and reconnect with how exactly it is that we exist and thrive in many of the spaces that we live in. And oh, introductions are so interesting. Um, yeah, so I always remind people and encourage people to decolonialize their thinking around how they approach um, not just religion, because everybody's main thought process is of Abrahamic religion, but there are so many other religions that exist around the world, and especially in Africa, there are many, there are countless religions. Um, so I always challenge people around that and around the language that we use, even around trans folks, etc. My ancestral name, which is also, I guess you could call my spiritual name, is Makosi Ingwe Yamabalabala, which means leopard with spots or leopard with colored spots. And so that is the animal that I walk with, that works with me. That is who I am, both on this plane and in other planes. And yeah, that's my practice, I guess.
Thank you all for sharing. You've all had, like we were talking earlier, but you have had and still have such interesting careers in like all the different aspects of life that you each reach out to, and the communities that you both support and also are supported by. And I was wondering if each of you could talk a little about what has, brought you into a spotlight in a certain way, and with Yolanda, around your show Bug, and talking about critics and white critics, and who we have employed, criticizing these shows and talking about our art practices, and like what voices are actually being invited to be there. um, and with Ravyn, your work with Black Lives Matter, and most recently with the statue, you'll have to give us a little more details about that. I don't want to give too much away, but and then Samson, you were recently in the Gillette ad that went viral. And what I am most curious about is not so much like these amazing moments in history that we could kind of put a stamp on, but more around what has been really positive about these moments for each of you. And then we'll kind of circle back and talk about also, what has been less positive or negative, and talking about what that has potentially done to you and how you felt that in your body. And you know how do we find compassion for ourselves, and how do we find support um, when you do go viral in these very different ways? And so I'm curious, I want to talk a lot about those things. And I'm wondering, actually, could we start with you, Samson?
Okay, all right. That's what we're gonna do. That's fine. We can do that. Cool, cool. Yeah, right. Why not? Yeah. So I was in the viral Gillette ad that looked at shaving and trans men and shaving, and I was blessed to be able to have my dad take part in the ad with me. I've often got that question as to whether or not he's actually my real dad or if he was just an actor. But yes, he is my father. um, um, yeah, that ad was a beautiful moment in my life, especially as a trans man, to grow up. You dream, for some of us, we dream about how we are able to express our gender and how our gender shows up in the world. And to actually have that first moment of learning how to shave from and have my actual father teaching me was that I don't even really have words. I try not to think about it too much because then I want to cry. Um, but it meant a lot. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. also blessed because the director and the team that was shooting the ad was predominantly queer, which was also beautiful to have
Yes.
that experience, and it was like absolutely wonderful. So shout out to them because that was a great thing. But it I didn't actually expect the ad to do as well as it did, if that makes sense. I thought initially, I was told that the ad was going to, go on like their social media channels and that was going to be it. And of course, this ad came out shortly after they had already previously done another ad that kind of looked at toxic masculinity a bit.
Yeah.
And that didn't go as far as this one did. So I didn't think it was going to go too far. And then next thing you know, it just kind of picked up steam and went haywire, and which was beautiful. And I started getting messages from people literally everywhere, from like all corners of the world. I had trans folks messaging me, both trans men and trans women. I had cis men messaging me, telling me that they had finally, like, watching the ad taught them how to shave because they didn't have that first experience with their own fathers. I
Nice.
had parents of trans children messaging me, telling me how much the ad meant for them and their kids. Like, and so I didn't actually think about the impact when I did the ad. I just did the ad to do the ad. Um, so now looking at it and looking back on that, I realize how important the level of representation is out there. And I guess I hadn't really thought much about it. I just, I was just doing something with my dad. Um, but I recognize how not seeing ourselves on screen represented, whether it's on stage, on film, whatever, TV, etc., what that really does to us. And I had to really sit there and think back and think to myself, what what did I know and see of trans folks on TV? And I didn't really see much, right? So the great things that came out of that is I've been able to do a lot of mentorship work, a lot of talking to people, a lot of doing talks. It got me to con, which was fabulous. Which that also linked into me being able to do a lot of motivational speaking, and traveling around to be able to do that. I haven't really had too many negative experiences, to be completely honest. I think my ancestors have blessed me in such a way that they've cocooned me in
Yeah.
such a state of love and positivity that I didn't see those messages. Whatever messages were out there, I didn't get them.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about any of them. Somebody actually had to message me and tell me that there was a conversation about it happening on Twitter, and where people were saying it's not okay for people to force, transness on children. And I was like, but I'm not a child. But I mean, if that's what, let's see where that conversation leads you guys, and just kind
Yeah.
of let that go. And that was the extent of it. So in those moments, I've been supported by community. I've been supported by family. I have been supported in the arts, which was really beautiful to see. And a lot of people may not realize it, but I actually got a lot of support from the people at Gillette. And I think that was also part of my ancestors working on my behalf, because they ensured that the team that I even worked with at Gillette and even at the advertising agency for Gray, I was surrounded by people that continue to lift me up and keep me safe and keep me protected, because they recognize how far it could really go. So I mean, that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of the ad.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Um, I think it's important to hear those things and to hear, like, especially when you're talking about representation and like you touched on it, but the fact is, like, there are so many people out there who've seen that ad and like have seen themselves or someone they love dearly represented in that ad, and they're like, that's so important because there's so little of that still.
Yeah.
And you keep hearing people say like, oh, it's 2020 or it's 2019 or whatever year it is. um and I just like really hope that it's not that it ends up being the first of many. It's not just this one moment in time where we had that really amazing ad from Gillette, like that we're going to keep seeing those kinds of things. um and I love that. I love that so much about that ad, and like knowing that you were the one in it, I was like, this is so beautiful.
Well, and I think too, like representation being like showing people in just doing simple things, like just being, just living, that it doesn't always have to be about trauma. That representation in its like mundaneness is also probably more important than anything, because then it, we can see ourselves, an actual reflection of ourselves rather than a reflection of what colonization has done or something, that it's just a reflection of normalcy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Um,
Definitely.
Yolanda, in talking about like normalcy and things that we, you know, are looking at as far as like the work that we're doing and what we from the mundane to also to our artistic practices, like we're all artists, we all create things, and you're so interesting because you are so multifaceted, like you are a storyteller. You create so much from your heart, like your show Bud, which I'd love you to talk a little bit about, is absolutely beautiful and makes me cry every time I see it. um, because there's so much in it that you can take away and relate to, like even if you haven't lived the story of the person in it, there's so much about it, like you know that person, you've known that person, maybe someone in your family was that person. And you did a lot as far as trying to start the conversation on what normalcy can look like for the criticism that we receive of our art making. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so part of like what I do, that I didn't really mention before, is I am really actively working on dismantling systems, and the theater industry is one that I'm really interested in. And I think we talk a lot about like decolonizing and indigenizing, and I'm curious about like I really want to have more deeper conversations about those things. But for me, when I think about it, when I think about decolonizing, I think about going into institutions, colonial institutions, and dismantling them. But when I think about indigenizing, I think about bringing in indigenous practice. And so I do both of those things. So when I'm engaging with a company from my own collective or even with my own work, I do it from I bring in my indigenous values. Whereas like if I'm and simultaneously they can both go at the same time. When I'm coming into institutions, I'm also like, okay, but we're going to shift some of these things. I don't want it to be the way that it works for every other show, because I'm not interested in that. These systems don't work for everyone. And if a system doesn't work for everyone, then a system doesn't work. And so I'm trying to sort of find ways of like bringing those, like taking those systems down. And so Managing's Collective, we uh, we were co-presenting the show in February. So my show Bug, um, which is a solo show about the effects of intergenerational trauma and addictions on Indigenous women in Northern Ontario, specifically Northern Ontario, but particularly just from where the story takes place. But I would say it's more like community based. But the reality is that addictions ravage our people no matter where we are.
Yeah.
So I think that the effects of colonization have run so deep that it affects us no matter what. Um, and so I really wanted to talk about the women who often get ignored and stepped over, and are feared, and bring highlight the root of these addictions and these issues, and find a physical manifestation for intergenerational trauma and addictions. And so I did this in this show. And the another part of my practice is that when I look at shows like Bug, and even like other pieces that I've been in, like Kamloopa, Kim Sanclip Harvey's Kamloopa, from on the West Coast. Um, there's a cross section between theater and ceremony, and it becomes artistic ceremony. And so Lindsay LaChance talks about this all the time and what that means, and so that there's a difference in the way that we create the space. And so all of this is just to say that like we have this practice set up, and so when it came time to discuss reviews, um for us, it just sort of aligned with the work that we had already been doing. And so, and when we did Kamloopa, Kim had also put an embargo on critiques. She banned all reviews, and only requested that Indigenous women write love letters. Um, and so that was really special because there was a little bit of a shakeup there, but it didn't get it didn't happen the same way over there as it did for us. So we had drafted a statement, and the statement was basically that we were interested in bolstering the views of BIPOC reviewers. So it was a call out to the media to hire either Black, Indigenous, or other people of color to write the reviews rather than the white people that they have writing reviews right now, the ones that are already hired. And that came out of a series of problematic reviews that had already just happened. At Next Stage, there was a couple of reviews that were culturally specific shows. It was for Tina Jokes and for Bilal's show. And the reviews were incredibly insensitive and transphobic, and it just was like, it was and I've read other reviews before that were so specifically on cultural works that were so problematic, and then we're like reinforcing stereotypes, and there was this like idea that if they didn't understand it, it wasn't good or valid art. You know what I mean? Like the way that they twisted it, the way that they described it was not like, it was as if it was like, well, it doesn't fit into our colonial Western idea of what storytelling is, then it's not good. Which makes absolutely no sense. So we put the call out, and I was asked to do an interview on CBC's Q, about the decision, because apparently it was a bigger thing than I had anticipated. I honestly didn't think it was that big of a deal. I'm like, hire brown people. I don't understand why this is a big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. I you know, and so I went on the radio and I talked about it, and I came home, and there was like a couple of things on Twitter that had started that were like, you're a racist. And I'm like, me? Pardon? Like, so I had a couple of reverse racism arguments, and I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, like, I'm famous, I've got haters, this is so it was literally 2 people at the time, and I was like, oh my God, is this what Lizzo feels like? Like, it was like a thing. And then I slept for like an hour, and I woke up to like massive amounts of comments that were like hate. Like, I had so many. I've never been called a racist so many times in my life. Like, I was called a racist. They started making fun of my weight. They made fun of my Two-Spirit identity. They attacked me for literally anything they could. They said that I was doing it for attention. That, oh yeah, well, she's not gonna like turn away ticket sales. I don't want to see your show anyway. She doesn't want white people at the show. Like, it was like, I don't know where they I don't know where they got all that from, but they pulled it all from anywhere. And it was days of this, and it was like hundreds of messages. And then it was like, they found my Facebook, then they would message me on Facebook, and they would email me, and they found my YouTube. Like, they literally, any way that they could find me, they found me. And I got like death threats. I got all kinds of vitriol thrown at me, and it was wild. I had to stop taking media requests after the first week because I had so many interviews where I was just saying the same thing over and over again. And I was like, this is just causing me more. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And so I had messages. There were articles that were about it in Australia. There were articles in Dutch. There were French articles. Like, literally, I was like, I don't understand. And like for months, like, it went on. Like, it just kept going. And so that was really difficult. But on the flip side of that, I also had messages coming in from like young women there was a couple of young women in the States that had reached out to me that were like, we're so inspired by this that we want to do it in our own communities. Thank you for doing this, like things like that. Some of the articles were actually like really good. And I got lots of love and support from my peers and from the community and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was that the five or six women that were hired to write reflections and write reviews, I think four of which were Indigenous, and then I think one was Filipina. Uh, all of those reflections proved our point, like 100%. There were so many aspects of those reflections that I was like, I don't care what you say, a white person would not understand that. They would not have looked at that movement and understood what 60 scoop is. Like, this is what I mean, right? I'm not writing it for you, Kelly Nestruck. I'm writing it for my community, you
Yeah.
know? I don't care about your opinion. And so for me, like that takeaway, like all of those beautiful things that those women said, and that I had elders standing up at every show and telling me how important it was that we were doing the work that we were doing. Like, my Indigenous community was standing up and saying thank you. I don't care. I don't care about anything else. Like, that was the most important thing for me.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that and for offering everything about that experience. I like, you do inspire me. All of you inspire me, and every time I tell like strangers about what you did, Yolanda, it like they're so shocked and like they realize, oh yeah, like why wouldn't we have thought of that in the first place? And like, I think
Because
the kind of work you all do is like this is the start of movements, right? Like, we've been, you all have been doing the work, but it's just like the movement has to actually like start going, and then other people start picking up bits of that movement, right?
when you stop listening to the colonial voices that have been planted in your head and start like,
Yeah.
like coming back to your like ancestral roots and like recognizing like, oh wait, I actually have way more power than they let me think I do. um
Yeah.
that's how these changes can happen. The I think that so many of us, we've been told something about ourselves, as Black and brown people. We're told things about ourselves that we end up believing and internalizing, and then
Yeah.
so then when it comes time to turn around and go, wait a second, they don't like that because they're like, you're going against the thing I'm telling you that you are. So I think we just have to remember that we have way more power than they let us think we do, and that we can use it, especially when going into institutions, coming up against institutions and systems. They need us. They need us
Yes.
more than we need them, because we have such strong communities that we find ways of upholding each other. Whereas, like, how much funding are they going to get with all white theaters? Because I've been on juries. So
Yes.
that's all I'm going to say.
Um, Ravyn, I'll ask you to speak next to the work you do, because you talked about your artistic practice, but you're also involved with Black Lives Matter, and you recently like blew up this summer. I saw videos of you speaking on all my friend pages, and not just people based in what's known as Toronto, but like all over the US. My friends in Australia were posting about it, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the context of the video, as well as if you want to talk about any of your work with Black Lives Matter, and then sort of like what has happened since, good or bad.
Sure. The speech is what we're calling it. It wasn't a speech, I think, first. It was a moment of exhaustion, frustration. I was really sad. Like my spirit was really shaken. so much death, so much loss, African, Indigenous alike, all over, all over. 600 years of genocide, and we're still having the same conversation that our ancestors were having. It was just, I just had enough. You know, there's a particular kind of way that Blackness is viewed in the world, but specifically in media, right? And there's a way that we have to show up and speak eloquently and kindly in order to be heard. And there's a way that our passion is turned into violence back against us, as Yolanda just mentioned, happened to you. And you know, when you have that moment, every person of color, Indigenous, woman, trans person knows what I'm talking about, where you're sitting in a room, or you have a moment and someone says something, and and your body starts doing something like that you can't control, and I started rocking. And when I start rocking, the rage is building, and it's got to come out, because I'm a mover, right? So when I start rocking, it's a thing. I just did it just now, thinking about it. And so I started like rocking, and I was like, am I gonna do this? This is not the plan. This wasn't the plan. The plan was to do a press conference talking about the anti-Black racism, the way in which these monuments of white supremacy are held over Indigenous people, Black people alike, and the ways that their celebration dismisses the actual genocide. They're not heroes, they're thieves, you know? And there's something to be said about that. Those are the criminals, not poor people, not mad people, not Black, African, trans people, you know? And so this is the work of Black Lives Matter, right? Like bringing attention to what people already know, but are unwilling to do something about, or in situations where they have been so brutalized that they internalize white supremacy and fight back against their own freedom, right? So all that to say, we had been there for a half an hour. I had already done a speech. My actual speech did not go viral. So I spoke third, I believe. And so we had laid out why the Egerton Ryerson statue. We had talked about in length why it was necessary to bring attention to one of the men, he and John McDonald, who are the architects of the residential schools. That same system taken to South Africa and utilized to create apartheid, right? That same system taken over to Australia. So this is this connection point to people all over, Indigenous people all over, and yet there's a university, a place of learning with his name on it, right? And so for me, I was just like, no. In America and the UK, they are rolling statues into rivers. They are doing all kinds of stuff. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna bring attention to it. We're gonna make it pretty. People like looking at pretty things. So let's get the color pink, real pretty, and boom, you know? And the police took it in such a way that they have never done before. They have never seen us as a threat before, not really, until this year. Because now there's a conversation of abolition. Now abolition is being talked about in Cosmopolitan magazine. You know what I mean? The work of the people who have been doing this for 60 years, 70 years, has now in the front of conversations. You know, abolitionists and activists are in Vogue magazine, you know. These things are important to be talking about and recognizing. And so we're at this sort of tipping point in 2020, which makes me actually really rageful. It makes me really angry that it took watching a gentleman being murdered in front of people to really see what has been happening to us for 600 years. We are right here in what they call Thanksgiving, which is a tradition of genocide, which is a tradition of a culture of mental deterioration. It is what drives us mad, right? Yeah. Literally the thing that drives us mad, and all kinds of other things. And so this is what we were talking about. This is what we laid out, this half an hour speech, and then the media kept asking about the statue, and I was like, enough. I am tired. I just have one more thing to say. That's why I said it like that. Can I just say one more thing? Here it is. You know, because there are, and in the speech I referenced all the ways: petitions, books, theater, art practices. People are doing spiritual work, spiritual cleansing, meditation, mindfulness, every single possible way to uproot white supremacy in ourselves, heal, get conversations going, and invest and engage in Caucasian humanity, appeal to it, try to appeal to it over and over and over again, and with no avail, with constant pushback, with constant bullcrap, and performative activism of Justin Trudeau kneeling, as if we want to see someone who's a politician or a police officer kneeling, made me watch someone die that way. It is just ridiculous, you know, the kind of stuff that I was seeing, and that's what frustrated me. And so I spoke. I did not expect it to go anywhere. I was really talking to the media that was actually in front of me. And then I left the stage. I went home. I washed my face, and then I just sat on my bed and stared at the wall. I was just so empty, you know. And there was Ovo 40, he's a producer. He posted a picture of me and said something like "talk that talk" or something, Ravyn, and tagged my name. Wasn't actually following me, but tagged my name from this press conference, because apparently I guess people had seen it. And all of a sudden I got all these messages from rappers who would not have actually known me otherwise, that were so violent and so dehumanizing. And that's not something that is like beyond my experience, you know, Black trans woman, I know what that's like, but I hadn't experienced it on Instagram before. I had about 900 followers, and I thought I was doing pretty good. And, you know, and they weren't following me. They just kept sending messages, putting my picture all over the place with all kinds of stuff, saying I needed a bra, like all kinds of stuff. And then someone else posted it, another DJ posted it, and then it went. And then, but before that happened, I did an Instagram live, where I talked about a comment that stung really deeply, because normally things just kind of wash over and like whatever, it's people's own stuff reflecting back. But they said we went from Martin Luther King to this, and it stung as a little kid growing up in Georgia who wanted to be Martin Luther King, but was pushed out of an idea of leadership because my voice was too soft or too high, or my skin was the color that it was, or, you know, all the ors, all the things. And so I turned to entertainment. I turned to the other vehicle that I thought that would create change that I thought would offer people an avenue, a different way to express or expand. And really and truly, selfishly, I just wanted people to leave me alone.
Yeah.
That's why I became an artist. And so here I am doing the speech. I leave it. I do the live. I go to sleep, and the next morning, I have 10,000 followers, and then 12,000 by midday, and then 15, then 20, and then I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And if you notice, I didn't post it on my own Instagram because I don't post these interviews on anything that I have. So I wasn't planning on being politically famous. And so it hit me because Madonna had posted it. I have critiques. I'm not the same as everybody else. I have critiques. So she posted it, and I messaged her, because then like loads of people started messaging me, and I was like, hey, thanks for using your platform this way. Appreciate it. And that was that. I don't know if you're the real Madonna or not, but you seem to have a lot of followers, because you know how people have those like ghost thingies. I was like, I don't know, but thanks a lot. And it was her. She sent me a voice message saying how much she was moved by it, how important it is, and she just wanted to give it a boost. And I said, thank you very much. And so it went through people, but it really landed on me when I had a conversation with Amanda Seales, who was a talented thought leader, creator, actor, activist. And we were having this conversation that I could only have with someone who is steeped in Black culture. Because I was like, it's so hard for me to be on the front line of a movement, and the very people who I am fighting for want me dead. Like, I don't know what to do about that. It is kind of excruciating, you know? And then she posted this video talking about my safety. And then the good part is that it opened up a whole conversation around my safety, which I've been able to use to open up to trans safety beyond myself. And so people have been donating to shelters and having conversation about abolition in real ways. You know, I said the positive parts about it are that it's connected to me to all these particular thought leaders who I've looked up to for a long time, and that's been really wonderful. But also, it really solidified my purpose, like here on Earth in this particular realm, and of elevating our collective humanity. And you know, for years I tried to keep my activism, my art kind of separate in a way, and it kept like smashing back against each other. And in that moment, people started asking me to write books, to not write books, but write articles. And so I was writing different articles and asking folks on my team for help and support, because I didn't understand what people were asking me. I'm dyslexic, and so I was having a real issue. I was like, I don't know what an op-ed is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. But that's why you need a good team around you, because they helped me out to figure out what it was, and then I wrote it out. And then I got asked to do an article for Maclean's magazine, where they wanted to know why the color pink, not why the statue, but why the color pink. There had to be some reason, and I really had to think about why that was, and what it helped me do was heal that 5-year-old wound of being pushed out and being bullied, and not feeling like I could be a leader. And so it's allowed me to. I already was validating myself, but it helped in that process. And so that's been the positive piece on it. But I'm still navigating it. It's still a lot to process, and I do have to like push back on people a lot, because a lot of folks mention me being eloquent, which is anti-Black.
Yeah.
You know, um, and oh, I wish other people would say it like that, which is really problematic. I said it in my way because this is how I speak. I don't shout not because I can. It's hard to, like, my voice just cracks at those places, and so I don't shout personally. And so, and I also didn't have a voice because the whole of day I was screaming for 12 hours trying to keep the rally and the arrestees in people's hearts and minds in forefront. And so I didn't really have a voice. And so it was really interesting, this conversation of, oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful, you made me feel so good. And I was like, how did that speech make you feel good? Like, it was horrifying. I was sharing a nightmare with you, and it makes you feel good. There's something about that to me that I think that people didn't dissect or hadn't dissected. And so, although I have appreciation, it was just something that I want people to be mindful of. So that's my large nutshell. Sorry, I'm a rambler.
No, thank you for sharing that. That was really informative, and I appreciate everything you talked about. Like, you each kind of touched on these different things that I think are kind of the ingredients to thinking about what if, you know, if we had a recipe for self-compassion, if it could be that literal and that direct, but these things of you know, the positive messages that some of you did receive, and like what it meant to other people, um, and to see themselves, or to, like, Ravyn, you talked so much about like your team, and you know, having your support, and the people around you who love you and care about you and want your best interest, have your best interest at heart, right? Like, that is, I don't know, I feel like that has taken me way too long to figure out as an adult, is just to surround myself with people who really, really love me and care about me. And that even when things aren't good, that you can still reach out to them.
Well, I think that's because we have this culture of ownership from white supremacy, right? And not just ownership, but independence,
Yeah.
right? We come from codependent cultures where we rely on each other. We are each other's currency, right? And so it is like not of us to move that way. But that's what we've been taught is successful artist, successful business person, the higher you climb on the ladder. But the more you move off the ladder, realizing that you don't need it, that's the more hate you get. Or that's what Black Lives Matter is to people. People can't even say the words because it dismisses that whole entire ladder, right? But I think that, like, going where it's warm and finding your people is really, really necessary. It is so important, and it takes us some time and some strategizing, because we are all living with particular kinds of experiences.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Samson or Yolanda, if you wanted to add anything into kind of last thoughts, or other ideas around, like, if someone, just any age, any background, was like, how do I deal with these things? Because, you know, they do live in our bodies, and we have to carry this around and also be compassionate to ourselves. Like, I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts on just like, what would you offer up as your wisdom, you know, from your experience?
I just I don't know if this is answering the question, but it might be. I think I can connect it. But just listening to you, Ravyn, I was thinking about how um many of us are told that we are not leadership material, or that we aren't successful, like we won't be successful depending on where we come from. Like I come from a reservation. Like the statistically, I am not meant to, go to college or graduate high school. I didn't graduate high school, but that's not the point. Like, it's statistically, we're meant to be held back. And so there's something about people who are either uncomfortable with leadership because we were told that we couldn't do it, and ending up being the ones to do leadership or to be leaders, or to like, and not with any idea of leadership in mind. Like similarly, none of the things I do are rooted in me wanting to be a leader. In fact, I'm scared of being a leader. Like, the idea of leadership is terrifying to me, and I don't know if I have the like whatever to do it. The perception people have of me is that yes, I can be, but whatever I've internalized is telling me I can't, right? Everything I do is from my heart, like I said. And there's this beautiful quote or Anishinaabe belief that Leanne Simpson talks about in Dancing on a Turtle's Back, where she talks about Odebwaywen. So Debwaywen in Anishinaabe means truth, and Ode means heart. And so she was saying that when you put the O in front of Debwaywen, it becomes the truth of the heart. On the way that she was looking at it was, in her case, like the sound that the heart makes is truth. And so when you make decisions from your heart, you're making decisions from your own truth. And so that's always just sort of what I've been doing. If it happens to fall in line with these like ideas of what a leader is, then cool. But it's always so interesting to me because it's not the first time I've heard it, like what you're saying, Ravyn, about not meaning to, but then ending up becoming. It's yeah.
It's activism, right? Like, activism is basically the fight for living, like the fight for life, right? And so I wouldn't be an activist if the world wasn't so crappy. If people weren't so crappy, right? Like, I'm an activist because my intersections make it so much so that if I didn't fight for my being, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know, African, Indigenous, there's so much about myself as a two-spirit trans woman who does not show up in the world the way that people think of trans women.
Yeah.
It like, I have to advocate for everything from washrooms to holding hands with my partner down the street. Like, that becomes an act of revolution when really it's just about romance and love.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but that's why I say I'm an abolitionist, because I didn't really understand it before. I thought it was a bad word. That's what we're kind of taught. It was a word from the past. But I really, really taken to it because it's like what African folks abolished slavery. You know, they abolished, like, abolition is it's unfinished project, but they started that process, you know, and had to dream my existence. You know, I'm living science fiction, and that literal truth is why I'm an activist. You know, I can't, like, I'm an ancestor too, right? And if we think of ourselves that way, then we have to move more intentionally, like, in the world, like, with each other, you know?
It's activism for the sake of survival, for our very existence, because it's constantly under threat. And so if we are not actively trying to stop it, then we just end up being a victim to it rather than and are oftentimes complicit. And so I read this, it was on the back of a bathroom stall, but it was one of the best things I ever read. It was revolution is a duty, not a choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's whiteness that squashes nuance, right? It squashes our ability to see more than what is in front of us. And so, you know, when we're thinking about activism and we're thinking about artists, who are like, how do you bring art and activism? Literally, the act of moving in your own body is activism, simply because of what has been put on our bodies, you know?
Our existence is resistance.
It is. Yeah. So that's my piece on it. I know, Samson, you've got something going on over there.
Wow. You know, I think here's the thing. Here's the thing. The thing is, Ravyn, you said something that is really juicy and it feels really good. It's delicious in my mouth to say. Um, you know, when you said, I am living science fiction, our ancestors were consistently already always futurists, always thinking about what is to come, always, always, always. The goal, the plan, the hope, the desire, the dream was always for a future. We happen to exist within that future that our ancestors had, so that was their science fiction. I also like to kind of look at it as ancestral fiction, if you will, or descendant fiction, if you will. I'm still navigating that specific the language around that, but our existence is both our ancestors' science fiction and it is our own science fiction, which is why yes, it is very true. We you are living science fiction. We are living science fiction, and I think the beautiful thing for me growing up as a child who loved to read. And so I also read a lot of science fiction books, a lot of dreaming, a lot of escaping, a lot of these things, was that I was always looking for a way out of what was my reality, right?
Yeah.
To run as far away as I could from my reality. And one day it hit me that the only way out of my reality was to go through my reality. That being said, um, hmm, I don't consider myself a leader. Probably in the same way that none of us really think of ourselves as leaders. But what I do feel is that my task, my role in my own journey is to lead myself out of my own darkness. It's not my job to lead anybody else out of their own darkness. It's my job to lead myself out of my own darkness. That is a responsibility that I think we all have. How I've managed to do that happens to create a light for others for them to see how they can also do it for themselves. And that's, I think that's about the extent of the leading that happens for me, but it's not really me leading anybody else. I am just every day striving to lead myself out of my own darkness. That's really it, right?
That's so important, though.
Oh my gosh, it's so deep.
You know, and I think how I came to that point and that realization for anybody else who's watching who might be younger or even just even within our own age group was it took sitting with myself in absolute silence. And there is a quote, I don't even know where I got it from. I might have heard it in a meditation. I really don't know. But it says to
Bathroom
sit,
stall.
it says to sit in a sacred place, one must sit alone. We are at our most sacred when we are with ourselves, because that is when we're able to connect not only to ourselves but to God, the creator, however you want to call that entity. If you happen to look at that entity in that way, it's how we're able to connect with the earth, how we're able to connect with the water, how we're able to connect with all these things that make up the brilliant universe that exists within ourselves. But to connect with that really requires silence. It means no distraction, no outside noise. It means allowing yourself to sit with your own thoughts, whether they are thoughts of your own trauma coming up, so that we can all push through. I think a lot of us are so stuck on getting over things, and colonialism teaches us that we must get over something. We must pull ourselves up and over
Yeah.
things. It's not about, I'm not interested in climbing a wall, right? I'm not interested in finding a way around a ceiling. I am going to
Yeah.
bust through the ceiling. I'm going to bust through the wall. I'm going to go through in whatever ways, because my ancestors went through the things that they went through in order for them to dream a through way from their reality into my reality. And that is where I'm existing in, right? It's in that place, it's in that throughness. And for me, I think where I'm at right now is that I'm realizing that much like Ravyn said, of she is living science fiction. Yes, that is also true for myself, but I also recognize that my life is a prayer. It is my ancestors' prayer, it's my mother's prayer, it's my father's prayer, it is my prayer. It is a consistent praying. And in that, not in the way that many people think of prayer, possibly of, having to have some kind of a religious, deity or vision or person that you're looking to, because I'm not looking to anything. I'm looking to my own spirit. So I'm forever praying to my own spirit. I'm praying to my own healing, my own gift, my own existence, my own possibility. I'm forever praying to that. So, how do I allow that prayer to shift me and move me through? And I think that when we find our own ways to vocalize and find language for us to be able to pray to our own spirits and have that connection through sitting with ourselves, through meditation, through all of these things, and closing out the outside world and everything the world wants to tell us, even so far as when the world wants to tell us the things that we should love about ourselves. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what I love about myself. I'm interested in what my spirit tells me is worthy of loving. I'm interested in what I feel like I need to protect in my own self. So everything that I do, all of these habits, from the minute I wake up in the morning to the moment I go to bed tonight, every single thing that I do is part of my protection ritual. They are all rituals that I'm creating every single day. And all of these rituals are part of my way of deserving all the things that I desire for my future. And I can't get to that without sitting with myself and spending the time to actually acknowledge what has hurt me, what do I need to move through, and what can I vision as a possibility for what's to come. I don't know. Maybe that helps someone.
That was a mic drop. Holy!
Yeah.
I just want to add one piece about being a leader. I think that there is an idea of a leader that is created from white supremacy, which means that you have to be in front. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. Everybody is so concerned with trying to be first instead of being true, instead of being truth of the heart, like instead of moving from a place of integrity, right? And I think that real leadership is in league with more than just one person. It's more. Martin Luther King didn't exist on his own. That's not possible. It's not impossible for one leader to exist and no one else to be around. I think that the media picks people. I think people pick themselves, which is why I said I don't want to be politically famous. I'm not interested in performing a kind of puppet act so that people can invite me into spaces to prove their wokeness. I'm not interested in that. You invite me into a space that you are committed to do the work, to it's like an ally, like as a tattoo, it's a permanent commitment to who you are. That's what I say.
Yeah, it's so funny when you said that the media picks people, because that's like the decision was made on the collective made the decision. In my case, the collective made the decision, but because I was the one who did the media call, the media then attacked me for it. They picked me out of the collective and chose me and like targeted me. And so now it's because it's all like they keep saying it was my decision, but it was the decision of the collective and the institution that supported us and whoever else supported us. Like, it wasn't just me.
That's a tactic. That's like an FBI tactic, and how they broke down the Black Panthers, right? It's an old school thing that media does to sort of pinpoint someone and scare people to becoming that.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah.
They win when they make us feel alone. I may have gotten that from Star Wars, but it's still true.
It's true.
And it's still and Star Wars being the fabulous science fiction that it is also a living science fiction. Like, so it is
Full
all of
circle.
these things. It's all full circle. And Yolanda, when you talk about the truth of the hearts, I think the thing that a lot of people are forgetting is that what rests and what pumps and what really is the 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 the, the the materia that and the energy that the heart is pumping, the truth that the heart is pumping, is a truth that exists within love. And I think for so many of us, we actually have no idea what love looks like. We don't know what it feels like. We're never taught these things, or even and sometimes the things that we're taught about them that we internalize are not always healthy and often are toxic. So when we sit with ourselves, it's when we are able to access and listen to the truth of our hearts, reminding us that we are deserving of love, and that in that deserving of love, it requires us to be patient and gentle with ourselves so that we can get through areas and spaces and environments and people and relationships where we do not feel loved. Sitting with ourselves teaches us that discernment that is needed for us to be able to quickly recognize right away when something doesn't feel like love and how to get ourselves the hell out. Because love requires that we protect ourselves.
Hi,
Love
hi.
asks that we keep ourselves safe. Love is all that we really need, but how we get to that place of love is through different means for different people. For me, it's through my ancestral work. For another person, it might be through their arts. Another person, it might be through, there's all these different ways. But how does love show up in our lives? How do we show up for love? And also, how do we show up for ourselves? Because by doing that, we then are able to teach other people how to also show up for themselves. And maybe that's where the leadership comes in. I don't know.
I think that's a perfect point to wrap up our conversation. I love that. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Easily.
And I want to say to miigwech for everything that you've all offered. It has, like, for even me just to sit here and listen to each of you speak and hear from your own experience, like what you have to offer to your communities and the world and to me. I very much appreciate this and value your time very much. So at that, I'll say thank you to all of you.
Can I just say one last thing?
Of
One very,
course,
very quick
let's
thing, just to
throw it
bring
in.
it just to bring it full circle to talking when you mentioned imposter syndrome, that when we talked about like the struggles of recognizing ourselves as a leader, I think that's where those things are connected, and everything that Samson just talked about, I think, are exactly those ways to battle that imposter syndrome that's going to happen when you come from a place where people might tell you that you're not good enough or that you can't do these things. That all of this like self-reflection and sitting with yourself and listening to yourself and your ancestors are the best ways, I think, to battle those feelings. I just wanted to like
That was perfect.
click.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's it right there.